Raymond, the Warriors drafted Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody with the 17th and 14th pick of the draft this evening. And this reminded me, Raymond, what did you do to celebrate after you had discovered you had been drafted to the GoldCast?
Oh my God, you're talking about, I don't know, I must have been 22 years old. Just, I'd completed my 4-year stint at college. I actually got a couple of extra years just for kicks. And I think I celebrated with, champagne like a lot of kids do. But then the very next day, salt and water down my throat. Prepare the throat. That's what I did the very next day.
You got to work the fingers out to make sure you got the editing. Yeah, I get it.
Lots of massaging.
I remember I actually, if you remember correctly, I skipped college. I immediately announced that I would be entering the podcast draft immediately out of high school at the tender age of 19 years old. And then I was drafted to the GoldCast, and it was probably the happiest day of my life.
This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
And our esteemed co-host,
Candlestick Will.
Boom! I love it. I love the intro. Our boy Candlestick Will is back, our esteemed third co-host of the GoldCast. He's in the building. Raymond's in the building. I'm in the building. Let's get started, gentlemen. And of course, biggest news of the night, Warriors draft. For weeks now, we've been contemplating, asking, is Bob Myers going to make the trade? Is he going to draft? On Monday, he said that as of that time, it looked as though they were going to draft and not trade, and the Warriors did just that. For now, we'll see what the future holds. But let's talk about this. Warriors picks with the 7th pick of the draft. The Warriors selected Jonathan Kuminga. I hope I said that right. A little bit about him. He had signed a 1-year contract with the NBA G League on July 15, 2020, and with the team Ignite. On February 10th, 2021, he had made his debut, recording 19 points, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds in a 110-104 win over the Santa Cruz Warriors. Kuminga averaged 15.8 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 2.7 assists per game. And then, with the 14th pick of the draft, Warriors selected Arkansas guard Moses Moody. On March 13, 2021, Moody recorded a career-high 28 points and 9 rebounds in a 78-71 loss to LSU at the SEC tournament semifinals. It was the 4th time he had scored 28 points that season. As a freshman, he averaged 16.8 points, 5.8 rebounds per game. Moody earned SEC Freshman of the Year and first-team All-SEC honors, and obviously he had declared for the draft on April 9, 2021. So now, gentlemen, I ask you, Candlestick Will, we're going to start with you, our resident Warriors expert. Where do you land? Bleacher Report gave Kuminga a B-, but then gave Moody's selection an A-. Where do you stand on both these picks for the Warriors?
Well, my assumption is that Bleacher Report's B- had to do with need more than the player himself, because Kuminga was by far the best player on the board at 7. And to that point, Moody was the highest guy on the board for the Warriors at 14, which is, as silly as this might sound, that's not always how the Warriors have operated. They absolutely at times have drafted for need or drafted for players they think would fit their system. And other times they've just drafted for guys they think are the best players available. And this is one of those times. They actually had conversations from reports that we've heard that they were thinking of taking Moses Moody at 7. So the fact that Kuminga fell in their lap at 7 and then Moody fell in their lap at 14, they are ecstatic with that result. There's a couple things in play here. One is that those were the 2 best players available, which is the smartest thing to do if you ever want to make a trade. And that's just ever, not just in general. Like, if you want to make trades in the NBA, you should always take the most talented human beings you possibly can, because other teams will then covet those players. And if you take the most talented players, you also have the best chance of those players performing in the NBA. I think what happens a lot of times is you say, oh, I'll get this guy because we need a small forward, and he's a small forward. And then it turns out that he's only a fit for what you were doing at the time, and suddenly he's not a very good player for other teams, and therefore he doesn't have the same value. Kuminga and Moody absolutely have NBA value. They're essentially both 3-and-D wings. Kuminga struggled to shoot, to literally like shoot the ball from three in the G League, which is why some people went from thinking he might have been the best player available in the draft, a few months ago, to deciding not to go with him at all and him falling to 7 in the first place. That being said, he has the skill set. You gave the numbers. He was scoring 18 a night and having a terrible shooting streak the entire season. It was a short season, but at the same time, he was shooting like 30% from three or something really bad. And yet he was still scoring 18 a game. And he was shooting like 60% from the free throw line. So even though he wasn't making his free throws, even though he wasn't hitting many threes, he was still scoring 18 a night, which shows you the potential he has to score the ball. And his defense has the potential to be elite as well. Moses Moody, same thing, good shooter, can create a little bit, is an absolutely fierce defender. And so when we're talking about like current NBA players that kind of fit the mold of what they think these two guys could be, the player that gets compared to Kuminga the most is a guy like Jaylen Brown, his ability to be a two-way guy, but also because Kuminga's best asset coming into the league will probably be defensively, which is what Jaylen Brown was, where he didn't have to do too much offensively, but defensively he would guard guys in the perimeter and give them havoc, and that's kind of what Kuminga will probably be any playing time he gets this first year. I actually think he'll end up spending a lot of the time in this year in the G League for the same reason he was in the G League last year, was because that's a better fit for him right now. A kid like Moody is similar to a guy like Mikal Bridges that played for the Phoenix Suns, got all the way to the finals, where he is that kind of perfect complementary 3-and-D guy where he can shoot corner threes, but at the same time, he can do a little bit more if you give him a chance. But his number one asset, again, would be his ability to play defense on the perimeter. So the fact that the Warriors were able to get two guys essentially kind of for the price of one, because they didn't expect both to be there when they drafted at 14, that they were able to get both guys instead of just one of the two at 7. I think that goes to the kind of night that they had.
I like it. Raymond, I know you had some questions. I'm going to turn the mic towards you.
One of my questions is whether these guys were going to be capable of contributing this year, which Candlestick Will already alluded to, and it seems like it's not really likely. The Warriors, the rumors coming into the draft were that the Warriors needed a star because the window to win is closing fast. It actually has closed a lot sooner than anyone anticipated, mainly because of the second Klay Thompson injury. That really puts a big question mark into his viability going forward.
And the departure
we know he's
of
going to
KD.
play. And the departure of KD. Well, that was obvious, already. But I mean, if Klay's not injured, I think the Warriors look like a more desirable destination. But once he got injured, I feel like the Stars went into other directions, and now we're having a hard time acquiring that last piece that we think can help make us a more bona fide contender. And to be honest, we've talked about this on the cast before. Will, I know you feel similarly. I feel like Bob Myers can't, trade his way out of a handshake. And I was not surprised that we didn't trade going into the draft, because Bob Myers does not strike me as a savvy trade GM. He's not a John Lynch. He's not like some of the other GMs out there. At the same time, I'm sure, as the 76ers revealed, wanted a king's ransom for some of these star players, which I get. And I think the Warriors were trying to acquire that star player without giving up Wiggins. I think they could have parted with Wiseman in a couple of picks, but I think they definitely wanted Wiggins in there because they think he is kind of a key component into leading that second unit next season, or perhaps even still being part of the starting unit and then contributing to the second unit and then also contributing to Klay's minutes when he needs to get rest. So none of that happened, which I wasn't surprised about. I was a little disappointed about that because, I was anticipating that whoever they draft, even if they're skillful like Wiseman or even a little bit less, are just not going to be enough to help push this team where they need to go, which is back into championship contention. Klay Thompson obviously adds a huge element of competitive edge that the Warriors need, but his health is going to be an issue all year long. And, Wiggins is still there, so I'm happy about that, but we still need that component. I'm not sure. So, Candlestick Will, I'm curious, do you think the Warriors might trade one of these pieces going forward in order to try to acquire that star? Because now they don't have the picks, but now the picks are solidified, meaning you know what you're going to get if a team does try to negotiate with the Warriors. Are either of these picks or both worth, and perhaps another contributing player that's currently on the roster, a star player?
I think to your point about, kind of being disappointed with the lack of a trade, as we saw with the Ben Simmons trade, that wasn't available. Like, no one was doing what they were asking for.
No one's going to give anybody Ben Simmons for what they want.
And honestly, I right now today, because of the way Ben Simmons played in the playoffs, I wouldn't give him. I wouldn't get Ben Simmons for Andrew Wiggins straight up.
His values.
Forget Wiseman. Forget the picks. And
he's
that's
a one-trick pony right now.
Well, and also the fact that that the Sixers are not going to go into the season with Ben Simmons on the roster because of the way that they talked about him after the season. Like, the chances of him being a Sixer is almost nil. So the idea that they would come from some kind of place of leverage was laughable.
It was.
They
totally
walked
agree.
away from that trade. Bradley Beal came out and said he doesn't want to go anywhere. So he wants to stay in Washington. At least that's the report. And same with Damian Lillard. So the idea that we missed out on a trade, well, as we found out, outside of Russell Westbrook, there were no trades available for any player of any talent. And I don't want Russell Westbrook on the Warriors. So even though he didn't make a trade, I don't know if there was a trade available. There was a report that the New York Knicks wanted the Warriors to trade down so that they could trade up. And they didn't do that. And in hindsight, I'd much rather have Moses Moody than lower picks in this draft. So, considering what we've heard, there's no reason to think the Warriors made a mistake yet. At the same time, we'll see if they're able to do something down the road. I do think that on paper right now, Kuminga and Moody absolutely have the potential to be very, very good Warriors in a year or two. If we're talking about what the best case scenario is for this year, it's that both end up being pretty damn good defenders who can score a little bit. And that defense is going to not only help the Warriors because they obviously thrive off their defense, but it's going to take pressure off of Klay Thompson, who is one of the best two-way players in basketball, but he's coming off two major injuries where asking him to be that elite defensively right out the gates is really unfair. And if Klay could just focus on his offense and be a secondary or even tertiary defender, because you've got guys like Wiggins and Kuminga on the floor, or you have Wiggins and Moody on the floor, where he can take just another guy instead of having to be the guy who takes the main guy, that could make a huge difference in stride in helping along Klay in his official comeback. Because if he's really just just be in the corner and shoot it up like no one in the world can, then it helps us in a tremendous way, because having to ask him to be that elite defender right out the gates is probably unfair.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out and how these pieces are put together. And I will yes, Andrew, to your credit, like, you're right. Like, Bradley Beal announced he wanted to stay. We don't want Westbrook. He does not fit our system at all. And it also looks like Damian Lillard was not interested in leaving. And yeah, I don't even want Ben Simmons for nothing, for
Who
peanuts.
wants an all-star that's a project?
Yeah, and an all-star that's afraid to make a dunk. Come on, and the Warriors need more offense. We don't need less offense. All right. So our second to last series against the Dodgers, and it did not disappoint, especially if you were a Giants fan. First game had all the thrills, kind of picked up right where we left off last week. Giants win 2-1. Then the game yesterday was just the worst. Giants got their asses kicked 8-0. And as we were saying, Raymond, on Monday's show, we were really nervous. We felt like the Giants needed to win the first two games because Cueto has really struggled on the mound, and we said even on that episode that the Dodgers must be looking at that final game and licking their chops to see Cueto. But boy, did not disappoint. He pulled it out. It's his first win since June 25th. He struck out 5 in 5 2/3 inning, walking 2 and only allowing 4 hits. Giants win big, 5-zip. Raymond, let's start first with your reaction to Cueto's huge day and essentially saving the series for the Giants.
It was a surprisingly refreshing watch. I mean, Cueto had velocity, he had movement, he looked really comfortable on the mound. He also looked comfortable in the bags. He's actually got great speed, and it was exactly what we needed in this rubber match. Crawford was also back in the lineup. That was huge. He contributed 2 RBIs to the 5 score. The Dodgers were held to only 4 hits, including an error. So it was just an all-around solid win, something that you wanted to see from this team in yesterday's loss. But, alas, we did get it in a very, important must-win game, in my opinion, especially now because, I feel like the Giants, even though we're the best team in baseball, I feel like we were one of the biggest losers at the trade deadline because right after that loss, the Dodgers solidified their roster to say like, hey, we're coming back. And when we do come back, we're going to have 2 of the best pieces in all of baseball added to our roster. So be prepared. So I think the best thing that the Giants can do going forward is to just get healthy.
I agree that the best thing they need to do is get healthy, especially because I also agree it does feel like we were kind of the biggest losers at the trade deadline. I had said offline, I don't know what Raymond's mentioning, I don't think we said this online. I had said that the last 2 games, the last 2 wins, if I'm a Dodgers fan, game 1 of this series and game 4 of the last series, I'm looking at the Giants and I'm going, well, we had some strange questionable calls at the mound as far as where the strike zone was the entire series, and that really hurt us in game 4. And then if I'm the Dodgers in game 1 of this series, I'm sitting there going, well, 9 out of 10 times Bellinger isn't going to make that, and we pretty much we lost these 2 games, but they were a little fluky. I'm not sure. I feel like a couple things don't go our way. We probably take these games for the Giants. That's what I'm saying if I'm a Dodgers fan. And so what I wanted to see in game 2 was just a dominant, undisputed victory. We didn't get it in game 2. We got it in game 3. And that's what I was looking for. A game that just solidifies our dominance over this team this season. A clean win, and that's what we got, and that's what I was super excited about. Candlestick Will, what are your final thoughts before we go on this final series, second to last series against the Dodgers?
I mean, we started the year 0-4 against the Dodgers, and now we're 8-8. So the fact that we've gone 8-4 against the Dodgers with all of our injuries, I know they've been hurt. I know Mookie Betts and Corey Seager and others have been out. They lost Trevor Bauer to being a horrible human being, and they lost Dustin May earlier in the year, and they don't have Kershaw. So it's like they have all the injuries that we have too. So that being said, our entire infield was injured, and we have a ton more throughout the year that we've lost, and yet we're still 8-8 against the Dodgers so far this year with 3 more to go at Oracle. So the idea that we're 8-8 against these guys after starting 0-4 is incredible. I think that's first and foremost. The fact that we are going into the rest of this season and we still haven't gotten Brandon Belt back, we still haven't gotten Evan Longoria back, we still haven't had hardly any contributions this year from Tommy LaStella. We're just finally getting Crawford back after his absence. Buster Posey didn't play today because of getting hit in the head yesterday. He doesn't seem like it sounded like he didn't have a concussion, so he might not be out very long. But I mean, some of our best players didn't play in this series, and we still won the series. So I think that kind of goes to what this season has been all along. You had said off air about how you guys kind of penciled this in as a loss because of Cueto's struggles. And my reaction when you would talk to me about it offline was that's kind of what this Giants team has been all year, is they win games that we've penciled in as losses. That after a really back-breaking loss where we lose the Will Smith walk-off, that, Tyler Rogers looks like, oh man, I can't believe, what he gave up that, home run. Oh my God, this and that. The world's caving in, and look at what we've done since that game, right? We still won that series, and we still won this series, and the Dodgers are still 3 games back. Trade deadline's not over. We still have until 1 o'clock tomorrow to find out if they do make a move. They're clearly been talking to guys from everyone from Chris Bryant all the way down to some pitchers. They're in on Jose Barrios and other guys. So it's possible we still might get some big names. But the big names we're definitely going to get are Evan Longoria, Brandon Belt, Reyes Maranta. I mean, there's a lot of guys, Tommy La Stella. There's a lot of guys that are in the system already that could be part of this team long term and going forward. And if we have more injuries, we could also pull from guys like Elliot Ramos, Joey Bart, and others that are on the cusp of being in the major leagues. So it's not that dire that we lost out on guys on a guy like Scherzer. And there are other guys that have been signed by other teams or traded from other teams that we could have used. But like I said, we still have till 1 o'clock tomorrow to find out what the final thing is. I do think that tomorrow is one of the biggest days in Farhan Zaidi's career as a Giants president.
Yeah, but I trust him to get something done sooner than Bob Myers, so there is that.
But I do think that tomorrow is going to be a huge day for him because if he does next to nothing, it is a way of galvanizing this group too. Like, hey, you're the best team in baseball. We're going to get healthy. We don't need anyone. Go. And that's what happened in 2014, is that the Giants went out and got Jake Peavy and nothing else because the only guy they needed to replace was Matt Cain, who had gotten hurt. And they were like, no, we're good enough. Let's go. And it really galvanized that group, and they went out and they won. And
yeah, it might just be one arm and one bat or something like that.
Right. So
I don't expect a big move.
If they were to add some pieces, it might not be huge names. Maybe it's a Kenta Maeda or somebody who can be a guy who can be a starter, but also can come out of the bullpen, has that versatility, and maybe doesn't cost much. Could be, a relief pitcher that, maybe another guy, one of the relief pitchers from the Cubs that, isn't going to be as sexy a name, but has been productive this year. And those kind of ads will make a difference. And that might not, be sexy for fans, but if we still beat the Dodgers anyway, Max Scherzer and Trey Turner are by far the 2 best players that are going to get traded, this year, and the Dodgers have both. But this reminds me also of when the Dodgers got Hanley Ramirez, and then we got Marco Scutaro. So that Marco Scutaro type trade might end up still happening this year, and so we'll have to find out and see what Farhan does.
Yes, we will see. And what say you, GoldCast Empire? Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know, where do you feel about the Warriors draft? How do you like it? Do you agree with Bleacher Report? Is it B- for Kuminga, A- for Moody, or are you in on both of these? Let us know in the comments. Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
And our esteemed co-host,
Candlestick Will.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.